In the 90s, we had Cowboy Bebop. In the aughts, we had Fooly Cooly. And in the 2020s, we have modern classics such as My Wife is 10, I Turned Into a Vending Machine, and this. But with the passage of time seemingly moving faster than ever, this glorious decade of anime is already halfway done. So let's take a break from barreling towards our imminent doom and look back on all of the great shows we've had over these past few years. I personally don't like myself very much, so I've been watching a lot of anime recently, and while there are a few promising shows I haven't been able to check out yet, I've been on a pretty crazy grind. I mean, anyone else here watch both seasons of Let's Make a Mug, as well as the dental hygiene spin-off only accessible through a non-translated orthodontistry app? Didn't think so. Keep in mind, I don't believe in objectivity with my ratings, I just speak from my heart, so don't trash me too hard, but also feel free to drop your own lists down in the comments. But enough prefacing. Without further ado, I present to you all the top 10 anime of the decade. Number 10. As somebody obsessed with making top 10 lists and ranking everything, sometimes I find it hard to tell why I fall in love with the anime I do. Is it the visuals, the story, how they complement each other, the theming, the comedy? There's just so many factors to consider that sometimes I wish I could just cut open my skull and look directly into my head, getting to the root of why I feel the way I feel. It invaded rules on every front imaginable. Here we have a mind-bending psych thriller from known lunatic Maijo Otaro, framed by a slick and consistent production from director Aoki of Fate Zero fame. It's the perfect balance of genuinely thought-provoking mystery writing with forward-thinking messaging, and just plain cool shit. Basically, it's about a system which can look directly into the mind of a serial liquidator at the moment right before they whack somebody. And our pink-haired detective boy has to ascertain the identity of the perpetrator through clues found in their own mind. These glimpses into the id of these people are chock full of that wonderful visual metaphor I love so much, and are used as a brilliant tool to explore the concept of self. I tend to not love brooding anime geniuses with a hard edge, but for some reason this show's main character just works for me. From his epic diatribes ripping apart the ideologies of other psychopaths, to the moments where the show drops an insert track and turns into a hype TikTok edit, to the insane twists and the shockingly well choreographed MMA fight towards the end, this show just drips badassery and I am all the way here for it. I think this is a perfect show to kick off the list with because a lot of pundits who speak on anime are kind of dumb and try to separate things that are objectively good and things that are just cool. People oftentimes create false dichotomies by saying shows are style over substance, when really there's substance to the style. It takes a different kind of genius to craft an enthralling aesthetic, to create unforgettable moments of badassery, and to craft shots with such beauty as to leave the viewer salivating. Really, editor? Real? Storytelling is just as important, but I think what really matters most is how it complements and harmonizes with the show's presentation. It Invaded not only exemplifies this principle, but explores an analogous concept for its main theme. Who are you? Are you a fundamentally good person just battling through obstacles of temptation, or a free spirit forced to conform to a society demanding that you act moral? What lies at the center of who you are, and why is it important to be in touch with this? Why you do what you do is essential to understanding and acting ethically. However, once you assign yourself a self-fulfilling role of identity, your dishonesty will bite you. We are not good or bad people, just people with differences who all need to learn how the hell to live together anyway, and this is a series about the justice system and its instrumental role of establishing such an environment. We explore characters who hate and disavow parts of who they are out of shame, seeing them as demons trying to infect them, and while battling your demons is noble, these demons aren't actually some evil entities afflicting you, they're just other parts of yourself. And not recognizing that can be quite harmful in the long run, as uncomfortable as it may be. This show is not about declaring what is good and what is bad, but rather exploring scenarios holistically and truly getting to the root of what makes these situations and these people tick. And that's the exact perspective I'm most interested in. Now, you may think that sounds like the most head-ass and pretentious shit ever. However, number 9. What does it mean to rep a set? Being part of a gang is no small thing. It takes a whole lot of sacrifice. The cruelty of circumstance and corporate greed conspire to turn everyday people into killers. And whether you rep the East Side, the West Side, or the Oinky Doink Cafe, these streets will treat you with the exact same harsh indifference they do any other poor bastard cursed to push product on them. Of course, I'm talking about Akiba Maid War, the show where a gang turf war is fought between maid cafes with animal-themed moe maids as the grunts. Yep. A surprisingly perceptive exploration of sacrifice, identity, and what it means to be a team. To be a maid. Now, this may not sound like it's to your tastes, but it's absolutely to mine. Not only is the theming in this series great, but what truly sets it apart is its mastery of tone shifts and comedy, bouncing back and forth between the most hardcore shit anime has to offer and just makes everything hit so much harder. This show's like a mix of Black Lagoon and, I don't know, Phineas and Ferb? I mean, really, like, we got Doofenshmirtz tier evil contraptions, but at the same time, the threat of mortality always placed firmly on the table. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but that makes it even more hype. This is an absurd tale, an anime original, a self-contained story, and a brilliant parody/satire. If you think you know what's coming next, you'll be made a fool of, because this plot is usually insane. There's just something I love so much about seeing these people push to their absolute limit, waiting to see them finally give in and pull the trigger, ending the life. Also, the show is genuinely hilarious. Number 8. Hey, you. Yes, you. Are you looking for a chronological dystopian coming-of-age supernatural action saga mystery narrative? If so, you're looking for Heavenly Delusion. Production IG blessed us with one of the slickest TV anime in recent memory, and a story that downright blew my mind. With an intriguing narrative structure and thematic emphasis on chaos, this series pushed all the right buttons for me, even if it dragged on a bit in the middle. It's gory, it's tense, it's conceptually scary, and it's very, very shocking. Let's talk about that for a minute. This show has often been criticized for relying on shock value, a generally frowned upon storytelling technique for good reason. Most people think it's a cheap and tacky way to get the viewer's attention, and while I personally don't mind if something's tacky as long as it's interesting, I don't find this show to be especially tacky whatsoever. The shocking reveals just aren't cheap. It is well orchestrated to be horrific. Why? Because Heavenly Delusion is evil. Pure evil. This series is not a pleasant watch. It's disturbing. The story goes into places that some people have argued are distasteful, and if you have any sensitivities to certain subject matters, I would actively recommend against watching this. Snowflakes do not interact. But if you don't, get ready to have your mind bent into a pretzel, salted by forbidden wisdom, and then eaten by an incomprehensible cosmic deity. It's probably worth mentioning that this show is very unfinished at the moment and ends on something of a cliffhanger, but when considering just how much this show has to offer, between its intricate character dynamics, bizarre psychological explorations, and true understanding of what makes something horrifying, it's enough for me to very strongly recommend it anyway. And that's not even to mention the character animation and visual spectacle of it all. I have a whole video on this series that I'll link in the description, but the bottom line is that this show is and that's what makes it stand out. Number 7. Every once in a while, an anime series with great action animation and mature themes comes around and is nothing short of a critical and commercial darling. Cowboy Bebop in the 90s, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood in the 2000s, AOT in the 2010s, and now we have what appears to be this generation's chosen one. That's right, I'm talking about Chainsaw Man. Frieren has been latched onto as this generation's favorite anime, sporting the #1 slot on myanimelist.com, and I believe what makes it so special is the character work and that god-dang emotional range. This show will have several episodes of contemplative journeying with low stakes and a therapeutic vibe, before jumping into a several episode long epic series of wizard battles that sell Frieren as arguably the most badass protagonist of this generation. This is a show about time, and as such, I think it's so crucial that it's been allowed to take its sweet time, with Studio Madhouse dropping a 28-episode first season. Because of this added flexibility, the show isn't afraid to commonly detour and smell the roses, something very thematically important as we are seeing the whole life of this woman. Not just the most thrilling moments where she slays the Demon King, not just the long stretches of slice of life and mundanity between, but a whole exploration of everything that makes her the elf she is today. She instantly has become one of my favorite modern protagonists, mostly because of how many angles her character is explored from, and the different sections of this show feeling like different shows entirely really makes it feel like the journey of life itself. This is a beautiful series of emotional highs and lows that is just so easy to get lost in. True bliss can be found within drinking in the beautiful scenery of this world as we appreciate the friends we've made along the journey of life. I wonder how many of you guys thought I was actually going to put Chainsaw Man on my list.
Yeah, I like the one with the big chainsaw in it, because it has the big chainsaw with all the teeth in it. It's a huge chainsaw. And Oh. Well, cat's out of the bag. I really do like this show.
Bruh.
I only even joke because this show gets a lot of flack. Not just Chainsaw Man haters, but also fans of the show I've spoken to deem it immature, overly simplistic, and overly horny, expressing that while it's pretty entertaining, it's not as good as the truly great anime out there which take themselves much more seriously and are supposedly deeper. I think this is hilariously ironic. Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue that Chainsaw Man isn't at times immature. I'm not going to argue it at a perfect adaptation. I'm not even going to argue that all the main characters are super likable. But I would be lying if I said I didn't immediately know I would love this show when I saw this clip of Denji and Power.
How'd you feel about your comrades dying?
It's whatever.
Gee, I love the anime guru and really want to date him, and if you guys are enjoying this video, you should subscribe. But Chainsaw Man represents a philosophy that I think is so important. It's a Shonen Jump series, essentially meaning that while it can appeal to anyone, it was at least vaguely created with a young male audience in mind. Many Chainsaw Man fans on some level would probably reject this characterization out of insecurity or an internalized notion that media for kids is inferior, but let me explain. This series is over the top in its violence, which is sick, and in its which is also sick, which comes off as more gritty and adult to immature kids. It's important to consider that while these themes are engaged with critically and intelligently, they don't have to be. It reminds me of a quote from Shonen Jump magazine's editor-in-chief, stating, "Although such series as Chainsaw Man may contain sexual elements that kids don't understand entirely, they are still drawn to it particularly because of that fact." Got that quote from Kraftsdorf. I think this really applies nicely to Chainsaw Man because it's not ashamed of its more surface-level appeals. Our main character Denji's biggest motivation thus far has been trying to touch some bobs. This is rather comical, but it's also very realistic. Not to get all Freudian, but I believe many people are extremely motivated on a fundamental level by It's one of the most central concepts to human psychology. It can give us validation, purpose, and a carnal sense of satisfaction. Yet it's often seen in anime as just no more than a lowbrow way to keep the viewer's attention. As many great characters as I can think of with tragic and brooding motivations, it's so refreshing to have a guy just be like doing this to woo the girl he likes because he doesn't have any self-worth. This show is basically about an immature kid trying to fit in with adult society. Denji fights to impress certain people he wants to look mature for to get their approval. He can dress himself up in a suit and tie all he wants, but it'll never look quite right, as Denji is pure id. Oftentimes, he allows his animalistic desire for violence and survival to course through him freely, and because of this, he's surprisingly in touch with why he does the things he does, a quality I wish a lot more people and pundits shared. Denji is a man who at least thinks he knows what he wants and doesn't lie about it, just as this series knows it's smart and doesn't have to prove it through repressing its more childish elements and taking itself so damn serious all the time. It has deep characters for you to sink your teeth into. It has intricate themes which can be applied to real life. All that hubbubaloo you freaks claim to care oh so much about. But beyond that, it's fun, honest, and endlessly charismatic. And that's something I find really, really special. People put down shonen and shows like Chainsaw Man for being immature when they truly enjoy them and just want to dress their taste up in a tacky suit and tie to fit in with a set of standards they don't truly understand. What's so funny is that it's this very immature desire to please that is Denji's biggest obstacle in the series, with his desire to appeal to Makima being deeply taken advantage of. Chainsaw Man is a unique mix of profound and stupid, and with such incredible charisma to most of the characters, I can't put it any lower than 6. I am an anime only though, so keep that in mind. I know a lot of people really took issue with the cinematic directorial style of the adaptation, and while I personally found it appealing for its juxtaposition... Oh my god, I was talking and I just couldn't shut up about Chainsaw Man. It's like possessing me. I gotta freaking get my mind off of anime for a second, go on a walk, and just get some fresh air.
Oh, that's what I'm still in an anime video. Go away. Oh my! I try to take one walk, man. I do one walk. It's always happening.
Well, as usual, my nightly walk was interrupted by a supernatural being forcing me to stay home and watch anime. But thankfully, it was a banger this time. Tomoyuki Itamura, the less beloved Monogatari director, has been leveling up and coming into his own distinct style over these past few years, and Call of the Night is undeniable proof of this. Lighting shifts, quick cuts, perfect geometry, exaggerated posing, off-centered shot compositions, vampires, it's all here. Dazzling scenery is populated by immaculate character designs, and lighting or angle shifts are commonly used to totally transform the emotional landscape of a given scene. I could go on about this aesthetic and directorial effort for hours because the atmosphere is just that special, but the story itself is underrated as well. Sure, a human dating a vampire isn't exactly a novel concept in media, but the exploration here showing our protagonists learning the intricacies of romantic relationships, friendships, and everything in between is very satisfying to watch unfold. It's a story about nightlife, solitude, and letting your freak flag fly. And here's a cool bit of info. Anyone here like the Mashal opening? The Dandadan opening? Well, those are performed by a band called Creepy Nuts. They are my MVP in anime music for the last few years, and they wouldn't even be here if it weren't for Call of the Night. Call of the Night is actually inspired by an older Creepy Nuts song, so when it finally got an anime, they used that song as the ED, and being so flattered that there was a whole show inspired by their music, Creepy Nuts decided to make the OP as well as an insert song for the show. It was their first time working within the industry so directly, and they've stuck around ever since to drop banger after banger after banger. So I thank Call of the Night every night for that simple fact. My final point is Anko Iguisu. Yes, hold your applause, but please. You're all too kind. Please, hold your applause, Shut up! Number 4. For this next entry, I want to see if you guys can guess it within 3 clues. Ready? Number 1. This is one of the top 100 rated shows on both MyAnimeList and AniList.com. 2. This series is most commonly praised for its witty dialogue, shocking twists, and character arcs that slowly weave into each other for an epic conclusion. And 3. In just 13 episodes, this show does one thing better than almost any other anime I've seen, and that is portraying the experience of feeling pathetic. Can y'all guess it? It's Odd Taxi. The first 5 minutes of this series absolutely stunned me. It was the little things, the imagery of our main character being too stubby to clean pigeon crap off his window, the bitter, struggling comedians who just aren't that funny bickering in the background as Otokawa drives alone, the careful, realistic mix of upbeat and dark character introductions during the montage scene, the especially naturalistic and down-to-earth dialogue, and the awesome sense of insignificance felt looking up at the idols following their dreams and performing on the most massive and enchanting stage. It's a series about wanting to do something with your life, wanting to respect yourself, and the many avenues low self-worth can take someone down. We follow various taxi customers' lives through a missing persons case, and they all come from different walks of life, but their stories gradually interweave, showing that as insignificant as you may feel in the context of a massive city, it is because you are so connected that your actions ripple throughout and affect such a great web of people. We as the viewer navigate these ripples while working our way through a complex but rewarding mystery narrative. You can even supplement your detective work with fully canon audio files that can be found online, which really makes you feel involved in the narrative and the investigation. I recommend this show more commonly than any other one on the list because of how deeply relatable and down-to-earth it is, but also how satisfying it feels to have a modern, one-season-long anime actually have a well-rounded conclusion that ties up all the loose ends and resolves every character arc. Well, most of them, at least. Number 3. Listen, y'all, I always hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm gonna level with you guys for a minute here. The chances are, if you don't like Bocchi the Rock, you just don't know ball. I might swerve in that corner, whoa. This series' utilization of various animation styles, references, and even mediums to communicate its emotions meshes perfectly with the relentlessly dissociative character that is Bocchi, allowing the viewer to be swept up in the same unverbalized emotions and thoughts as she is. I mean, it really plants you in that noggin of hers, which I super appreciate. It's a show with strong production value, plentiful character animation, and lovable protagonists. Nijika is inspiring, Ryo is believable and charismatic, the pink thing is funny, and the music in this show is just sick. You can tell it was a show created around music as opposed to merely including it. Typically with performance scenes in anime, it feels like an entirely different show with the changing of art styles or the characters suddenly snapping into their personas, but with this show, you can feel the emotions going into each set, can sense the hesitation and nerves, and truly appreciate the performance for what it really is, an expression of emotion. That is the show's biggest strength for me, its ability to communicate the emotions of these characters in such a pleasant and engaging way. I'd say another key...
Adrian.
What's a father?
Explain.
What's a father?
We are.
The father. The father.
9 months in my womb making me suffer. And she looks like her stupid...
The father.
If you would just get up and teach them instead of handing them a freaking...
モカちゃんが教えてくれたいろんな見た目になれるアプリなんだって。どれどれ？
Hopefully you guys get what I mean. Number 2. I'm in an interesting spot here because I've already made pretty decent videos about both of the shows I have left to talk about. I think those videos are fairly comprehensive and you guys should go check them out if you're interested, but there's one thing tying them together that I had never noticed appealed to me so much until making this list. The first of these shows I'm going to speak on here is Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, a show made by animation nerds, for animation nerds, about animation nerds. Sure, the dialogue is witty and surprisingly dense. Sure, the character design is immaculate. Sure, But what I appreciate most here is the sheer creative passion and childlike wonder on display. I feel inspired and even hopeful when I see such heartfelt and fanatic characters as Asakusa and Mizusaki. particularly because they go through all the unglamorous hoops and practical bullshit they need to pursue anime production. I know on the other side of the screen was a group of real-life, passionate animators and creatives with these exact same dreams and the exact same BS standing in their way. Because you don't just have to love animation to be an animator. You have to come to terms with sometimes turning in half-baked products. You have to learn to compromise with your team and their creative vision. You have to accept that just sustaining your own livelihood is probably going to take extra effort from other things you aren't as passionate about. You grit your teeth, rack your brain, and fight your way through every trial and injustice placed in front of you. You choose to pit the world against you, all because your love just runs so deep and you're probably on some level autistic. Sure, following your dreams is something everyone wants to do, but Eizouken is uniquely about that struggling creative life. I would love to shake every single animator who worked on this show's hand personally and express to them just how much I admire what they do. Obviously I can't, so I'm glad I can at least express it here. I love you, Science Saru, I love you, Masaaki Yuasa, and I love you, Sumito Owara. I love you all so much, but I guess not quite enough to not butcher your names. Now, time for some honorable mentions. Just kidding, it's time for number 1, I'm not doing all that. Number 1. Well, it's not a very standard pick, but this show embodies that willingness to put your passion and idealism to the test, to develop that resilient and grounded type of optimism I so admire and covet. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I like the one with the big zombies in it. Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead, is disguised as a show about finding meaning, but really it's a show about finding happiness. That distinction may sound unimportant or pretentious to some of you, but it means a lot to me, okay? We tackle the ever-cliched meaning of life question in such a fresh and hopeful yet legitimately intelligent and calculated way. We have comedy that genuinely hits because I have the sense of humor of a miscarried fetus. We have the intrigue of a burgeoning young studio and director here as well. If you guys are genuinely interested in hearing my more in-depth thoughts about this series, I recommend checking out my latest video. I dive pretty far into why I love it so much, but for the sake of keeping this entry to under 10 minutes long, I'd just like to say that it hit me right in the soul, man. Sure, the production falls apart, but that's also extremely thematically relevant and kind of hilarious, so it's still my number 1 anime of the deck.
Dandadan is a modern classic in the making. I have to mention it. I can't put it anywhere on the list yet because I'm trying to let it cook with Season 2 coming this summer, but it is creativity unbound, and it has endless potential to become potentially the greatest anime of this decade.
Watch my video on it for real.
Well, that's my list. If you genuinely enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'm begging you, please, on my hands and knees and all that stuff. On a real note though, making it to the end of the video means the absolute world to me. Let me know in the comments what you guys want to see next, and drop your own lists down below, because I'm really fascinated to see what they are. Patrons, I'm sorry this video took so long. It was a lot of work, but you guys made it all worthwhile to me. So thank you to Karta, Sumgoon, Trey, Funky Boy Haas, Ev, Aesop, Hermit's Nook, and Artemis Locke. Have a wonderful day, wonderful people.